Hey, IDC family. Thanks for watching the IDC daily videos. Gonna come to you today with Kilo, who is going to continue, I guess, the little series we've had going of books that have shaped us, asking various IDC members what books they've read that have been really impactful for them. And so I asked Kilo if anything stood out to him, and he got, if you know Kilo, this won't surprise you. He got real excited about talking about this one book. So Kilo, first, thanks for taking the time, man. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, brother. My pleasure.
All right. So, and I told you this before we started, I don't know much about this book, so this will be helpful for me as well. But tell us about, first of all, tell us a little bit about you. Just give us the short, the quick version, and then tell us about the book that you picked out.
Sure thing. Hey, so my name is Kilo, as Shane said. I've been married now for 12 years to my bride, Nikki. We have two boys, Elijah and Noah. Ton of energy. And so you guys will probably know them. Noah is always dancing. and Elijah just head full of statistics about football. We've been going
how old? What do you say, 6 years old?
Yeah, so Elijah is 7.
7. And statistics about football.
Yes, yeah, it's crazy about it. We literally run routes in the house. And so it's almost as soon as I'm done eating, it's like, hey, Daddy, are you ready to run some routes? And so my son Noah, who's 3, he's also like, hey, Daddy, time to run routes. And so it's been fun. And so we actually were playing Madden today, and so that was even fun too. So
fantastic.
Yeah, so we've been at IDC now since 2015 actually, and it's been great. I lead a growth group. Been leading a growth group for about 2.5 years now, and it's a joy. It's a joy to do so. And I also serve in a student ministry, and my wife is a part of the choir as well. And
Absolutely.
So yeah.
That's
our family.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, tell us about this book that you picked out, and tell us why.
For sure, man. So, Conversational Evangelism, written by father and son, Norman Geisler and David Geisler. So, I picked up the book back in 2009, and I was working in a corporate, and I became a believer in 2006. And for me, when I became a believer, like the first 2 years or so, I was just hit with a ton of questions from people of different faiths at work. And so I'm like, man, how do I have these conversations without getting into an argument or of any kind? And so I forgot how I came across the book. But anyways, I took a look at it and read it. I couldn't put it down. And part of the reason is it's a beautiful balance with
Oh. Okay, guys, pause the recording there because I lost Kilo. Maybe you guys didn't, but I did. So you were saying it's a beautiful balance. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a beautiful balance with highlighting what the Bible says about evangelism, and then just offer some practical steps for how to apply it. So it offers this framework that's super helpful. There are 4 different roles in the book. They're called musician, artist, archaeologist, and a builder. So the first role, the musician, the goal here is to, listen as you talk to people from different faiths. It's to be quick to listen. So as a musician, you want to listen and to hear what's referred to as the sour notes. So the book calls contradictions, anything that's contrary to the truth, as sour notes. And, you might be singing in a choir, you hear somebody singing. I can't sing, but I love to sing. And so I sing a whole bunch of sour notes. When you hear the sour notes, something is off, right? You're like, what's going on? And so the book talks about what are some of the things that are contrary to truth. And so an example is somebody might say that there's no such thing as truth. That's a sour note. That's an illogical belief, because is what they're saying, is that true? Right. And so it allows you to hear what are some of the contradictions that people are saying about the Christian faith?
Mm.
What are some of the contradictions that they're saying about the Bible, about Jesus? And so what you want to do, the first step is to just be the musician. Don't even try to, no rebuttals, nothing. Just listen so you can hear the sour notes. Somebody might say, oh, I'm spiritual. Listen, what does that mean? You know, and so it's the first step is being the musician.
I can see
Now,
how that would be. I can see how that would be really helpful. I think for a lot of Christians, right? We want to we want to jump in and we want to say our piece, and particularly, I mean, I didn't know you back then, but like for newer believers, especially new believers who are not necessarily like children, but like adult believers, they found this new thing and they want to tell everybody, which is, I mean, praise God for that. But that's a good like instruction for maybe folks with a lot of zeal, is like in your zeal to say and testify. There's also a place for being a good listener and receiving, not in the sense of like being passive, but making sure that you're talking to the person in front of you, which means you gotta be a good listener. So that's super helpful.
Shane, you hit it. And the illustration that always helps me is like you could possess a ton of knowledge, right? And so the mistake that I used to make is I was just trying to pour out all the knowledge that I know on a particular individual. Like, so it's almost like I'm just going to pour a hose of water on this individual as opposed to just giving them a glass of water. And that's all they need, you know? So it's like, you have to hear, what is it that they're saying? Like, just because somebody say they subscribe to a particular faith, you still need to listen, because what they believe may not be consistent with what you know about the faith. You know, so they may say I'm Muslim, but what they actually believe may not line up with the tenets of Islam. So you have to listen and not just say, oh, it's a Muslim, I know exactly what they believe. So you got to be a musician. Be quick to listen, as James tells us. The next step, the next role is the artist, right? So what the artist does, he paints the picture. She paints the picture. So you're painting the picture by asking clarifying questions so that they can see the truth for themselves. So somebody might just believe, like the example that I gave, there's no such thing as truth. We may be tempted to say, nope, that's wrong. You shouldn't say that. But what the artist does, he'll ask, if there's no such thing as truth, is what you're saying true? And so what that allows to happen, it allows the individual that you're talking to come to the truth on their own. And people tend to be more receptive to the truth as they arrive on it on their own, as opposed to you trying to point it out and point your finger at them and try to teach them. So that's what the artist is doing. So you've gone now from the musician to the artist. You're painting the picture because your ability to ask the right questions is going to be contingent on how much you are listening.
That's good. That's helpful. Yeah.
And so as you go from the artist, you become the archaeologist, Shane. So you're digging, you're trying to find out what are some of the specific barriers that's preventing this individual from taking one step closer to the Lord. Is it an intellectual doubt? Is it emotional? Is it just volitional? You know, I give an example. There was a guy at my old job, and he knew I was a Christian. And so I had my Bible on the desk, and he came by and he said, you read this book of fairy tales? And I said, why do you say that? And so I was like, do you want to go to lunch and talk a little bit? And so we went to lunch and we talked for about an hour. And before we got started, he prefaced it by saying, hey, I studied physics and everything, so don't try to fool me. And so we talked about the Big Bang and all of those things. And then after an hour of conversation, I said, hey, if I can answer all the questions that you have about Christianity in a way that makes sense to you, would you consider taking one step closer and getting to know God? And he said, no. And so right then and there, that's completely volitional there, where there's nothing I could have said that would have helped in that conversation. And there's another example with a young guy a lot of these things happen at my job for some reason. So
That's great. Oh, that's a great example to us, man.
I'll take it, And so one young man, he said, I can't believe in the Bible because it doesn't contain all the supposed books of the Bible. And I said, really? And we talked through some of that. And at the surface, it sounded as though it was an intellectual doubt. And so as we talked a little bit more, as the archaeologist, as I'm digging, it came to realize that the reason he's not in a church is because of church hurt. It had nothing to do with the intellectual things he initially mentioned. And so it's like you can't take what they say at the surface. You got to dig to find out what's really holding this person back. And then as you go from the archaeologist, you go to what's next, the builder. The next role is the builder. You want to now build a bridge to the gospel. I want to build a positive case for Christ and his validity. I want to show how Christ is unique, And so I went from the musician to the artist to the archaeologist, and we're now building the bridge to the gospel. And so this book really lays out just the specifics of each role and how to just master them. And so, yeah, it's been a true encouragement. I mean, when I first started reading it, I would just buy a whole bunch of copies for people in my church. And then I would, Norman Geisler's son, David Geisler, he has a ministry. And there's a presentation that I ended up getting, and then I presented it a few times. And so it's a great tool. It's a great tool.
That's super helpful. Super helpful. Hey, on that last point, the builder, is that in that book? Are they talking primarily in terms of like an apologetic sense, where you're kind of making in a good way, like arguments, or is it arguments? Is it testimony? Is it like personal testimony? Is it like primarily like a Romans Road type thing, or does it get real specific, or is it more just saying here at this last phase is when we're now more encouraging and commending Christ, kind of in all of the different tools we might have? Do they narrow in on something specifically, or is it more general?
They do. And what they do, Shane, what I like is it could be subjective truth. It could be your testimony that a person needs to hear, or it could be the objective evidence. And so it gives you some guidelines to what is this individual going through? What would be best to share with this individual? And so they do offer some suggestions from, if you start off with your testimony, how to build from there. If it's objective evidence, just showing the credibility of the scriptures, you show how to build from there. And, one simple question is, hey, what do you think about Jesus? And so, Shane, I lie to you not. It was last January. Went to lunch with a coworker who wasn't a believer, and I just asked him that question. Hey, what do you think about Jesus? And as he told me, I heard all the misconceptions, and then I was able to clarify and paint the beautiful picture of who Jesus is. And Shane, he was late for his meeting because he wanted to hear more about Jesus.
That's awesome.
And so it helps. It helps in that regard.
Oh man, that's so good. That's so good. But I think just even that simple framework, you just breaking it down like that is really helpful. And then I'm assuming you would tell us that to check out the book, there's more there. But if not, IDC family, just go to Kilo and say, can I be a fly on the wall in your next lunchtime conversation at work? When we're allowed to do such things again, right? So
right.
That's good, man. Hey, that is super helpful. I now want to go pick up this book and take a look. Thanks for your excitement, but also, man, thanks for your faithfulness and not just reading about a good book, but really following through and letting that shape your life. I think, again, those of us who know you and get to see you and talk to you know that this is not just an intellectual interest in a book for you, but a way that you get to commit your life to playing all those roles. And so really appreciate you doing that.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for taking the time, man. Really appreciate it. And we'll come back to you. Okay.
All right. Love you, man. You take care.
All right.